Well, folks, I'll remind you once again that we'll be starting in about 1 minute. If you have anything in the fellowship hall, you're going to want to grab it out of the fellowship hall. As we said, his pastor's class will be meeting back there, and we don't want to interrupt his class as they go a little bit longer than we do in here. As that class has a video and a presentation and everything else they do every single week. So we will head out through the side door there and head to our seats, not to our seats, to our cars. Last week I said it was Wednesday night. Today I said head to your seats. I don't know what this is. I'm struggling with opening Sunday, Wednesday, Thursday morning announcements for the service here. But we'll be doing that tonight. So once we're done with the service, you'll be exiting out the side door to your cars on a Sunday night. There we go, all taken care of. We want to remind you of that before we end the service tonight. Well, thank you for coming again. Let's all stand together. Let's sing some songs out. And we're going to sing some songs. We're singing a classic that I love, Rock of Ages that cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee. Let's sing this song out together. Rock of Ages cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee. Let the water and the blood from thy wounded side which flowed be of sin the double cure. Save from wrath and make me pure. Not the labor of my hands can fulfill the law's demand. Could my zeal no respite know? Could my tears forever flow? All for sin could not atone. Thou must save and thou alone. Nothing in my hand I bring, simply to thy cross I cling. Naked come to thee for dress, helpless look to thee for grace. While I to the fountain fly, wash me, Savior, or I die. While I draw this fleeting breath, when mine eyes shall close in death, when I soar to worlds unknown, see thee on thy judgment throne. Rock of Ages, cleft for me. Let me hide myself in thee. You may be seated as we sing that classic hymn, hymn number 703, Blessed Be the Tie That Binds Our Hearts in Christian Love. For about 20-something years of our church's ministry, every single time we took the Lord's Supper, we would sing this song. 1 second. A church member's calling me right now. 1 second. Hello, this is Pastor Joe Jackson of the Community Baptist Church. How may I help you? No, it's completely fine, ma'am. I was just answering because I wanted to make certain you were okay. Oh, wonderful. Okay, good. You're welcome, ma'am. I just want to make sure you're okay. Okay. Bye. One of our seniors has been having some health issues, and so I wanted to make certain that I'm trying to catch them all weekend. Let's get back to singing hymn number 703, Blessed Be the Tie That Binds. Bet you never had that happen in church, have you? Blessed be the tie that binds our hearts in Christian love, the fellowship of kindred minds is like to that above. Before our Father's throne we pour ardent prayers, our hopes, our fears, our aims are one, our comforts and our cares. We share each other's woes, our mutual burdens bear, and often for each other flows the sympathizing tear. but we shall still be joined in heart and hope to meet again. Wonderful singing today. Let's go ahead and let's have a prayer time, and we're going to pray for the two new missionaries we are hoping to take on for support. And those two new missionaries we're hoping to take on for support, that was the end of the singing. Thank you, ladies. The two missionaries we're hoping to take on for the support is the Berge family and Dr. Ann Livingston. And those are two families. If you look on the back of the sheet, and I would like to apologize. I did not realize I made a gaffe until I was teaching in teen class today, and I looked at the sheet and I realized that as I was doing the sheet, I flipped the pages. And so if you tear the page off and put the church copy in the box, you don't get to keep the list of the missionaries with you. So I told the teens this morning, I said, tear off your copy, put it in the box, put the church copy, keep it for yourself. I always make fun of that because every year it's kind of like a running gag to me how many people will put the wrong copy in the box. This year I want you to put the wrong copy in the box. And I want you to take it home, and I want you to take it out. And I want you to take the copy and I want you to put it on there so you can remember what you promised to God. And then you'll have a list of all of our missionaries who we are hoping that we are currently supporting or we are hoping to take on. And the two are new missionary opportunities are Dr. Ann Livingston to Haiti and the Berge family. I've been talking with the Berge family all week trying to get things set up to get that video that they did. I thought that video was wonderful that he did for us. I think their ministry is an awesome opportunity. Like I said, I grew up listening to stories about Amy Carmichael and William Carey and all these different ones. And I think that some of the missionaries we have here, we will be hearing about and telling our grandkids we had the opportunity to be a help with. And so I'm looking forward to try to take these two families on, but we won't do it unless we know that we have the funds to do that. We are a church that goes by faith, but we're also a church that goes by commitments of our believers of our church. And so these are two people we've had our church members said we'd like to take them on, but we would like to know that you're behind taking them on. And if they're not ready to take on, then we'll hold off. We've had Dr. Ann come, I was thinking about this. I think Dr. Ann's come to, 2 or 3 of our missions conferences in the last 2 or 3 years while we've been trying to get to this spot. And I told Pastor, I believe that this year we have it in there that we could pull this off. That'd be a great year for us to try to do that. Yes, Jeff?
Have we lost anybody or to be able to gain two people? I love them both, but I'm just wondering.
Last year, as you remember, we did have one missionary who decided he no longer believed in the Bible. And so he resigned. And when he resigned, we had that missionary funds that made it a little easier for us to get to that spot. And then the second thing we had happen is that we had a missionary church planner. Now, if you remember, we had the Andersons, who we've been supporting the last 2 years. And the Anderson family, they are now basically self-supporting as a church. And so they are now, they're one of those families who we help through Jehovah Jireh. And so we help support them. And so because those two families stepped back, it made sense that if the giving continued as normal for the previous several years, we would be able to continue helping support these missionaries. But on the exact same time, things are different. How many have just woke up and gone, COVID? How many have done that yet, right? You're sitting there and how many have walked into a store, stopped at the door, walked back to your car to go get a mask? How many have done that recently? How many? I told this was in like middle of June. I go get allergy shots every 2 weeks. I walked in the allergy shots. I'm sitting there, the lady's giving me my shots, and I look over at her as she's doing everything for it, and it clicks. I'm not wearing a mask. I'd come all the way in the building. I have to walk around this maze of a building. I walk all the way in, and I'm sitting there, and this nurse, she's a very nice Christian lady. Her brother's a Baptist pastor down south, and she lives about an hour away from your drives to work, and she's just sitting there, she's chuckling. Because she knows I normally wear a mask, I've just forgotten. And she's sitting there and she's not saying a word to me. And I go, I would like to say, it's okay. I know you're busy. You're fine. And I'm getting strange looks the entire time. I felt like, do I have like something on my shirt or something? It was I didn't have something on my face. So but it's a different world we live in. So we want to make certain that everyone's on that same group and setup that we could take on these two missionary families. Because once we take them on, we're going to keep taking them on. We're going to keep supporting them. We're going to keep moving forward with them until they either come off the field, pass away, or they have to change something that makes so we can't support them, which, by the way, has been very, very rare in our ministry to have the third option. But we have had our very first missionary was the Berrigers, and they served, I believe, over 50 years in Brazil. And we got to serve with them the last 10 years as they finished out many of the great works they had done and got different people to come take over their ministries. So these are the two missionaries we're hoping to take on, the Bergies and Dr. Ann. So I'll have someone pray. Who would like to pray right now? I'll open up the floor for who would like to pray for these two missionaries, that God will help us as we move forward on that. Caleb, I saw your hand. Thank you, sir. Who else? Was that one of those moments, Caleb, where you're scratching your face again? I keep telling you that, man. You got to get in trouble. James Witten, I saw it. Was there someone else? I saw Eli and Kyla. So let's have Caleb, James, Eli, then Kyla. Let's go and pray, folks.
Dear Lord, please help us that we have the funds and that we can take on these two missionaries who we think would be a great addition to our church as we're growing and have the funds to do that. Amen.
Heavenly Father, thank you for grace and love in your Son Jesus Christ. We pray that you'll provide the finances to take on these missionaries, deliveries, and Dr. Livingston, and pray that the gospel will spread to all nations. In Jesus' name, amen.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for the opportunity we have to come and serve you in church. Lord, I just thank you for that. Lord, thank you for everybody that was able to make it out for church this morning and tonight. Lord, I just think of our missionaries that we support, Lord. And I just thank you that you've been able to bless us thus far, to be able to support all the missionaries that we have. Lord, I just pray that you will continue to bless us with the funds and the finances we need to be able to take on Dr. Livingston and the Bergies. Lord, I just pray that you'll bless their ministries there. I know they're anxious to get back to their mission field, Lord, for Dr. Livingston and Haiti and the Bergies. Lord, I just pray that you'll be with them, help them to be able to get their support that they need to be able to go back to the government, to be able to work things out for them to get back sooner than later. Lord, I just pray that you'll keep them safe as they travel and go to church to church, Lord. I just pray that you'll be with them. Lord, bless their family and bless Dr. Livingston as well. In Jesus' name I pray.
Amen. And that you join with us. I do have a couple quick announcements. Some good news. Pastor talked with Doug Hartson this morning. It looks like they're going to release him to Regency West so he can do some physical therapy. His wife is already home. She is COVID-free. Doing much, much better. Said I got that drug type of, was a drug cocktail they gave the president. They gave that to Doug Hartson, and I guess they gave that to Liz. And they're both doing much, much better. And they said, thank you for the prayers. I will let you know this, and I've said this for a little while on and off here. It's coming. So I want to make this very clear to people. COVID's coming for people, okay? It's a virus. It's a cold, right? It's like the flu. So it's coming. So don't be surprised when it comes. One of my pastor friends, he's a pastor out west. This morning, he put a big urgent, and there he was, dressed in a suit, standing in the church parking lot. Got a phone call from his wife, as his wife, I guess, does work with children, and got a phone call that she was in a classroom with children all week long who had COVID. He said, it is, Sunday school starts at 9:45, it's 9:30 in the morning. And so he's standing there like, my wife has been with people. You're like, what do we do? And he said, listen, we have a plan for this. And he's walking, and you're like, they can tell. Like, he's like literally standing in the parking lot, go back home. Because this is what, so listen, when it does happen, right? And stuff does happen, and one of Virgil gets it or someone else gets it, let's not panic. Let's take it with good measure. Let's look and say, well, this is the reason why we've had Dave Comstock come volunteer over here and put a radio so we could do parking lot services. There's a church about an hour south of here in Jackson. They just had it hit their church. I think they said they had 5 families get it. I know a couple of churches over here have it. And by the way, the church in Jackson said, we pretty certain they didn't get it from us because all 5 families weren't in the same service together. It's pretty amazing. You can get it at Walmart, Meijer, Sam's Club, all those other places. So it's everywhere. So if it's coming, it will come. When it does, we'll send out a text message. We'll let you know. If we can continue to go forward, we'll keep going forward. We have no control over this. And as I'm giving this down, some of you right now are getting a little bit despondent in your look. Don't get despondent. Just understand, this is the world we're in, right? This is the normal thing. Last year, I said, I remember our intern talking to me and Dave Comstock on a Sunday morning going, is there anyone in the church? Because the flu bug, how many remember the flu bug that hit us last, was it November? I remember the Barclays were sick, the Wittens were sick. I don't remember I think Virgil even got sick, which that's a miracle of God right there. I remember Pastor got sick. And I remember it was like literally on a Sunday morning, and listen, it wouldn't shock me. So I'm giving you a heads up before we get into this, right? This is coming. It's a virus. It's fall, right? It's getting colder. No, it's coming. So whether it's COVID or the flu or whatever, this is the world we have. And as we said for everyone, say, be safe, be smart, be wise. You know, don't go lick a door handle, okay? Don't stand around coughing people. Do our best. We still have the chairs socially distanced apart. All the different things. You see me, when the moment we come in and people come in here, I put a mask on and I walk around with a mask. This way, if I were to cough, I don't cough on anybody. I usually stay about 6 feet away from people. All of our classes are set up the same way. We're doing everything we can. I can't guarantee anything. How many are going to someone's house for Thanksgiving this year? Yeah, all you dangerous people. Right there. I had someone call me up and lecture me about the church. And I was like, what? It's really loud. Well, I'm at the store here. I'm like, you're lecturing me about safety protocols of the church while in Meijer with 555 other people. So let's be consistent. Someone called me and said, well, I think with this Doug Hartson thing, I think we're just going to quarantine and just going to stay home. I said, well, that's fine. If you want to quarantine, I'm fully for it. I have zero problem with it. Just make certain you do it right. That's how we do it right. So, well, you can't go to work, and you can't go to, in fact, I gave this speech about 4 times. I said, you can't go to work, you can't go to any stores, just stay in your home. And they said, well, I couldn't do that. So, well, if you couldn't do that, then be consistent. Come to church. So, there's my little speech for you. Do what God has for you. We're doing everything. I walked around $2 a gallon that we used to clean the building. $82 a gallon. It's the fastest COVID-killing product in the market. $82 a gallon. And I get it on sale because we're a church. So we're not being cavalier. We're doing everything we can. We spray down after every service. They say do your billing maybe once or twice a week. We spray down after every service. We spray the bus down after every time the bus is used. We do everything we can possibly do to try to do the best, but we can't guarantee anything. So I'm giving you this warning. Now, how many? I have a disclaimer. I have warned you. It's coming, right? So now we're all good. So when this does happen, if you're not a part of the church text group, I highly recommend you get a part of that church text group so we can send you out text messages. That's the best way you can get it. If you do feel sick, you do got a fever, stay home. It's simple, right? We've been saying that for 30 years. Say it again this year. It's a little more edgy this year maybe. But we want to try to get everyone the best we can because we would like to keep this building open as long as we can. Because this morning we had, was it 7 teenagers? 7 teenagers. And this morning we were teaching them the value of worldwide evangelization of the lost. And we gave all 7 teenagers 50 pennies. And the reason we gave them all 50 pennies was we said, we want you to support worldwide missions. So we're going to give you 50 pennies. And we want you to take a penny every week and bring a penny back and support missions every week. This is your money. You can do whatever you want to do with it. But if you would get into the habit today of doing this, so then, by the way, if you get into the habit of praying every single day, because now there's your money. It's money. And these teens, they ate it up. I felt bad for Brother Virgil. He had 14 girls swarming him in the auditorium, asking him how to fill out tithe slips. Because they'd never done it before. And they love the idea. Hey, we get to support the Bergies. The one girl came and said, do you mean I'm going to get to support them? My penny gets to support the doctor in Haiti? Yeah, that's giving. That's the world. And so we got to do it today. We can't do that on a live stream. We can do a lot of stuff on a live stream, but they can't get around Brother Virgil. So we want to keep this open as long as we can. So help us as we try to do these things together. Well, those are some of my quick announcements. Tonight's sermon, if you want to turn to John chapter number 12, we're going to be studying our missions theme here. And our sermon tonight is, If It Die. If it die. And no, we're not talking about COVID. The sermon tonight is, If It Die. Joyful Giving by Don Siss. As I said before, if you'd like a copy of the book, I have several copies. I will gladly let you borrow one. But John chapter number 12, verse number 23, verse number 26 is where we're going to be today. Before we get started that, I want to tell you a little story. It's about a man by the name of David Brainerd. How many have ever heard of David Brainerd before? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6. So a majority of the room has never heard of David Brainerd. Is that correct? Let me say, as far as I know, I have no idea who David Brainerd is. By the way, that's not a problem. That's why we're telling the story. It makes it more fun to me if I get to tell the story. This story is awesome. By the way, this is some of the things we teach our young people is these missionary stories. Today in junior church, we taught them the story of Amy Carmichael and walked them through the life of Amy Carmichael and why we want to take on Dr. Ann Livingston and why we want to take on the Bergies, because we saw what happened before when that happened. David Brainerd was probably one of the most genius young men of his generation. David Brainerd was an American missionary to the Native Americans. He only lived for just a short life, but he had an extremely fruitful ministry. David Brainerd was literally a genius. He went to an Ivy League school. He was so intelligent, he would often get in trouble with his professors because he would argue with them. During this time period, there was a famous preacher named Jonathan Edwards. How many have ever heard of Jonathan Edwards? He preached a sermon, Sinner in the Hands of an Angry God. It shook the United States continent for the world of Christ. David Brainerd was a young man who was tutored by Jonathan Edwards. Many people believe that the last 2 years of David Brainerd's life, he courted Jonathan Edwards' daughter with the plan of marrying her. When David Brainerd was a student in one of these Ivy League schools, he brought forth a challenge because the professors of the day were teaching things like God is deist. That means that God is here but doesn't have an interest in the world. Jesus Christ never came. There is no such thing as salvation, heaven, or hell. And they were teaching this in the Christian theological seminaries. And so he would often get in these debates with these men, and he would win. So much so that they finally started kicking him out of class, and they actually made a full notice to the whole student body that if another student like David Brainerd corrected a teacher using the Bible rather than logic, is that not an amazing thought? The student would be expelled from the school. David Brainerd asked a friend if he would come and talk on the subject, and that friend, unbeknownst to the faculty, was the person they invited to come talk. They invited Jonathan Edwards to come speak to the student body and give a commencement speech about how the faculty was correct. When David Brainerd hipped off Jonathan Edwards got up and said, "This faculty is full of sin-loving, godless heathens." What a wonderful way to start off a sermon. David Brainerd soon left college because, as he said, I literally would get kicked out of every class. He was offered any church he wanted. Jonathan Edwards offered him to come work at his church. which was the largest Christian church in the continental United States at that time. And he said, no, I have a dream. The Native Americans of the United States need the gospel of Jesus Christ. While serving with them, he contracted what most people now believe to be tuberculosis. In his early 20s, he would ride on a horse and spit blood off of his face with every horse step. It was said that while he would preach, he would keep a rag in his hand to catch the blood from him coughing up his own lung tissue. I was thinking about that today as I was thinking about COVID. How many people would show up to a service if they saw the speaker spitting out blood? But while in the Delaware Indians of New Jersey, he made a massive impact. 1743, he began working with the Native Americans and would continue until 1746. He only worked for about 3.5, 4 years. But in that time period, it was amazing the things he did. If you've never had a chance to read some of his devotional and journals, I challenge you to read it. The thing that I found most amazing was not the fact of his deep faith, but of the immense forms of depression that would sometimes spit over him. Because this man who had such a brilliant mind and such great phenomenal speaking would sit there and say, "But God, why are you killing me? I wake up every day, barely able to breathe. I am coughing up blood. My God, why hast thou forsaken me?" He was affected by difficulties faced by other missionaries of loneliness and often lack of food. He would sleep out in the bitter cold. Could you imagine having a hacking cough, sleeping out in the bitter winters of New Jersey? Inside of a tent. His works and writings have supported some of the greatest missionaries of yesteryear. His first missionary task was with Comiskey, a Holostatic Indian settlement near present-day Nassau, New York, 30 miles away from missionary John Sargent, who was working in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. Brainerd remained there for 1 year. During that period, he started a school for children, began translation of the Book of Psalms. Subsequently, he was reassigned to work among the Delaware Indians in the Delaware River. After this, he moved to Crosspum, New Jersey, where he has most fruitful ministry. Within a year, the Native American Church in Crosspum had 130 members, starting from 0 to 130 in a year. You know what? The quote is often attributed to John Huss, one of the great Christian forefounders of our day, that he said this: "If they light me on fire, the world will come to watch me burn." Little did John Huss know one day they would take him and light him afire. Literally. For the cause of Christ. And David Brainerd said, "Hey, listen, I got one life, one shot, one hope." These years he refused several offers of leaving the mission field to become a church minister, including one from a church in East Hampton. He remained determined to continue to work with the Native Americans despite difficulties. Writing in his diary, he wrote this: "I could have no freedom in thought of any other circumstance or business in life. All my desire was the conversion of the heathen, and all my hope was in God. God does not suffer me to please or to comfort myself with hopes of seeing friends, returning to dear acquaintances, or enjoying worldly comforts." In November 1746, he became too ill to continue and moved to Jonathan Dickerson's house in Elizabethtown. After a few months of rest, he traveled to Northampton, Massachusetts, where he stayed in the home of the famous preacher Jonathan Edwards. He remained at the Edwards house until his death in the following year. He was diagnosed with incurable consumption in the final months. He suffered like most people would never suffer. He died of tuberculosis on October 9th, 1947, at the age of 29. His gravestone reads, "Sacred to the memory of Reverend David Brainerd, a faithful, laborious missionary to the Stockbridge and Delaware and Sicourian tribes of the Indians who died in this town October 10th." What a life. Most people would look at that life, by the way, like I said, once again, I pulled this from Wikipedia. This isn't some random praise book. But it was a life that lived by a motto of, if it die. I got one life. I got one opportunity. When someone once wrote him a letter and said, "Why won't you take one of these other churches? There are other men who could do your job." I loved his response. If other men could do my job, let them come get it. I've lived with that as one of my mottos. If you want one of my jobs at church, it's yours. You can have it. But you got to come do the work. The day I see you can do the work, it's yours. See, most time people want the position without the work. The reason why David Brainerd did such successful mission work inside of those Native American things was, I believe that every single time his drips of blood came off the side of his chin, and as he stood there coughing, people looked at that man and said, that man could go home and he's staying. Why? There's got to be something different. There's got to be something real. There has to be something there's something there that I need. Hey, does the world see a difference in our Christianity that they wanted? See, I believe the reason why we had great awakenings and revivals in yesteryear was because there were people who looked at the mission field of their current world, looked at the mission field around and said, I'll do that. I'll be different. I'll give up everything for the cause of an invaluable soul. We were talking today with the young people. I'll ask them the same question. I'll ask you the same question I asked them. If I came to you today and said, listen, we have a vision from God. God just spoke and said, all it would take is $1,000 and your child gets to go to heaven. How many would pay it? Right now. How many? $1,000. My kid goes to heaven. $10,000. Done. $100,000. I'll sell my house. Right? There are children all over this world who need the gospel of Jesus Christ. There are moms and dads who need Jesus. See, we get busy. Matlock is awesome. Turn it on, Murder, She Wrote. Those are shows I grew up watching. I like documentaries. Those things are fun. And by the way, they're great. Hobbies are fun. They're all good. But it amazes me. I'll talk to people and I'll be like, have you told your family about the gospel of Jesus Christ? Well, we haven't never really gotten around that. What do you talk about? What's left to talk about? It's their eternal soul. If it die. Here's the thing. There's too much of me living inside of me for God to live through me. I'll say that again. There's too much of me still living inside of me for God to live through me. See, David Brainerd stood there and said, listen, here's where I'm at. I'm dead. I'm a dead man walking. That doctor can't help me. This doctor can't help me. No one can help me. I'm going to die. If I'm going to die, let me die well. Did that mean he was free from depression? No. You should read it. It's an amazing thing. If you struggle with depression, you should read the life of David Brainerd. Read his journals of him sitting there and on a day where he talks about seeing children getting saved, starting a school, having these education things, and then the next day sitting there going, I can barely breathe. Why, God, are you doing this to me? I'm not going to make it to see 30. Going through that back and forth. It gives us the human picture, the humanity. How many, every once in a while, you wake up and go, man, I feel a little bit depressed today? How many turn down a presidential debate and went, I feel depressed today? I was listening to one of the local debates of two of the politicians who were running for office, and my dad said, "What's your thoughts?" I said, "Can I vote neither?" He's like, there's not a box for that. I voted this last week. I went and did early voting, and on two of the spots, I wrote in my wife's name and my father's name. I said, I can't vote for either one of these people. There was no one running against the person. I said, there's no person here. There's literally no spot here. There's no person who promotes biblical values or this stuff. So I'm going to write my wife in. Here it is. I told my wife, I said, "Why would you do that to me?" I said, "Because A, I know it wouldn't happen to you, and B, I hope it does happen for you." But listen, here it is. We get one life. And yes, there are times that it's hard. But there's a question of, will I die so that God can live through me? And I'm not talking about the physical death. I'm talking about a spiritual death, letting the old man that's inside of me die. Let's read this together in John chapter number 12. John chapter 12. "And Jesus answered them, saying, The hour is come that the Son of Man should be glorified. Verily, verily, I say unto you, except a corn of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. He that loveth his life shall lose, and he that hateth his life for this world shall keep it unto life eternal. If any man serve me, let him follow me, and where I am, there shall also my servant be. If any man serve me, let him will my Father honor." It's clear. For God to do a great work in your life, somebody's got to die. There was a very influential young lady in my life. She was a youth pastor's wife, and she was just energetic. She just knew God, and she had that great drive for God. And one day I got to hear from one of the young ladies in our church who went to a session that she went to, that she did something very strange every single morning. Every single morning she would get up, she would walk into the other room, she would look at the mirror, and she would say, "Die." She said, because every single day the old woman that was me needed to die, and Jesus needed to live through me. She said, "I do it every morning." So one day my husband came in and looked around and said, "Honey, are you okay?" Because that'd be a little bit creepy if you were the guy on the other side of the room and you heard that for like 3 days. Die, die, die. But here's the thing, some of us, we need to tell our old man to die. The old man has to die within us. It's the only way that God can do any great work. For a plant to grow, the seed must die. For any Christian to grow, the old man that's inside of us must die. The one that is bitter, the one that is angry, the one that is depressed, the one that doesn't want to do God's will, the one who gets frustrated when you don't get the drink you wanted, or gets angry when people say things, that man must die. Here's the hard part. It's easy to die once. It's hard to die daily. Isn't that not what Paul said? I die daily. To wake up every single morning and go, no. I know who I am. In Romans chapter number 7, where Paul writes out, "The good that I would do, I do not. The evil that I would not do, that I do. Oh, this wretched body of flesh, who shall deliver me?" So the good things that I want to do, I don't do those. And the bad things I'm not supposed to do, I do those. What in the world's wrong with me? How many have ever had that argument with yourself? You're sitting there. I told my wife will sometimes laugh at me because I'll talk to myself and not realize I'm talking. How many have ever did that where you talk to yourself and you start talking out loud? I'll be sitting there, and the other night I was talking to myself and I was going, she goes, "Who's stupid?" I said, "What?" She said, "Who's stupid?" I said, "Oh, I'm stupid." She's like, "Oh, okay." It's like, you were supposed to argue with that at that moment, honey. She's like, no argument. And by the way, she's right. Because I was rethinking something in my mind that I had done, and I'm going, "You're an idiot." Because God had told me to do something, and I didn't want to do it because I know better. I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to look like a fool. But see, that's the old man who says, "I don't want to die." One of the scariest transitions in ministry I've seen in the 30 years that I've been at this church. I've been on staff now for, figured it out, it's 11 years now. One of the scary transitions I've seen is the fact of how many people don't want to die. Now, I'm not saying people should want to go out and commit suicide, but I'm saying when I first was in ministry as a little kid, I would meet people who were senior citizens or people who were Christians and saved, and they would say, man, I can't wait to go to heaven. Heaven's great. And then I started noticing a change where I'd be sitting there, and I'm going through, and I talk to pastors like, is this unusual? He say, yeah, it's now becoming more and more common, where people sit there and go, I'm not ready to die. And I understand wanting to live. We should want to live, right? Like living. That's opportunity to serve God. But there should be a peace in knowing I'm going to heaven. I don't want to die today. I'd like to live longer. I want to see my kids grow up. I want to see, I want to be here because I want to do a ministry because I want to be able to give more at the throne of Jesus. But hey, listen, if God calls me home tonight, I go to heaven. I go home. But I think we've seen that we want our way. We want our life. Are you giving your best to Jesus, or are you still holding on to your life? How many have ever seen the picture of it's an old picture. It was done, I think, in the 1930s in a newspaper. And it's been redone many, many times over. And it's a picture of a little girl holding this little teddy bear. Have you ever seen this before? She's holding a little teddy bear, and there's Jesus kneeling in front of her. And Jesus has this gigantic teddy bear behind his back. And Jesus leans in, give me the teddy bear. I have something better. And she goes, no, it's the best teddy bear ever. And Jesus goes, no, if you just give me the teddy bear, I have something better. Trust me. And it's this great little comic, and I remember reading as a little kid. I've seen it 100 times over. See, but that's how many of us are. We stand there and go, no, I don't want to give it. This is my best. It's mine. And God goes, I got something so much better. Are you giving your best to the Master? Let's look at the biblical ways that we can give from God's Word. First thing you got to understand is it's an insignificant seed. I don't want to be mean, but I'll be honest. In the grand scheme of life, you are precious to Jesus. But to most of the rest of the world, we're just a person. How many understand that? To Jesus Christ, I am valuable. To Jesus Christ, He would die for me alone. But to most people, we are just a seed. We are as a vapor that appeareth for a little while and vanisheth away. God describes you in comparison to a seed of wheat. You looked out at a field, thought, wow, man, God says I'm one of those minuscule wheat things on the top of the wheat there. I get to be that. Or you're a grain of corn, a kernel of corn. That's me. And God says, hey, the best thing you can do for me is die. And all of us, well, all the kids here are good. All of us actually learned in school. I have to be careful what I say now, because I'll say things. We all learned this in school, and then the kids will look at me in the classes they would teach, and they have not learned it. They learn everything but education. I was asking a kid on the bus ride in Wednesday night, Jeff was there, what they were learning in math, and a 5th grader had not yet learned fractions. And I was sitting there like, how has a 5th grader not learned fractions yet? And they said, oh yeah, we're just learning fractions. I'm really struggling with 1/4. And I said, 1/4. Okay. I remember, like, how many, that was like 1st, 2nd grade stuff, right? They did this. And so I have to be careful what I say here. But when we talk with you guys, I think we can go through this. We all remember how seeds were planted, right? We all did it like kindergarten, 1st grade, right? You took a seed, you put it in the little styrofoam cup, right? You put it in the windowsill. You grew the plant. Or an egg carton, that's right, they put it in the egg carton. Then you go there, you plant your garden in the backyard. The seed's got to die. Hey, it's an insignificant small seed. I was getting afraid that Chaplain Kyle was going to steal my sermon this morning when he was talking about seeds. I was like, man, don't do it. Don't use the other verse. See, it's an insignificant seed, but it's a seed that understands it has a greater purpose. I love what he said. If you leave the seed here and don't plant it, nothing happens. Here's the thing, we keep holding on to what we have rather than giving it to God, investing it in God's ministry, investing it in other people. It's just our life. And our life is an opportunity to do other things. Psalm 37:25 says, I have been young and now I am old, and yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. God makes it very, very clear. He says, I've been young, I've been old. Every single time I've watched a person follow after God, they have been taken care of. They have been blessed because they have found the Lord's blessing in their life. It makes a difference. And some people will look at a David Brainerd and say, oh, David Brainerd only lived 29 years. What difference did that make? A lot to the 130 people in his church. A lot to the multiple schools he started. Do you realize he translated the whole book of Psalms? He translated a good portion of the New Testament in less than 3 years. Do you know how smart you got to be? To learn a language in less than 3 years and then translate stuff into it. Speak in that language. I'm sorry, I took 1 year of Spanish. I can say hola. I have a 137 IQ. That puts me in the top 1% of humanity. And I can only say hola in Spanish. That's all I got, folks. I was talking to Miss Alicia Hicks earlier today, who plays the violin for us. And we were talking about, I said, didn't you? I said, I played violin for 1 year. She said, do you want? I said, no, I'm out. Sorry, not happening. It is not my gift, not my skill. It doesn't matter. These things, hey, God gives certain people certain gifts for certain time periods. You better use it. Hey, David Brainerd could have lived a wonderful, successful life as a preacher in a church that no one ever heard of. But do you realize that there are dozens, hundreds, thousands of missionaries who have read his journals and books? Jonathan Edwards took his diaries and put them in book form and published them, sent them around the world. So to read about a young man who was just amazing. Men like Adoniram Judson, Jim Elliot, read those books. Amy Carmichael read those books and said, wow, that's a life of faith. It's an insignificant seed, small. But here's the thing. When that seed gets planted, it does a mighty work. Take an apple seed, plant it in the ground. Let an apple tree come up. They tell me that today you can still go pick apples from apple trees that were planted by Johnny Appleseed. I remember reading about Johnny Appleseed. They tell me that today you can go to the Garden of Gethsemane and you can go stand in the Garden of Gethsemane and you can stand beside an olive tree that was probably there during the life of Jesus Christ, and they're still picking olives off that tree today. See, here's the thing. Someone took a seed and planted it in the ground and said, this is going to be a tree one day. Wise men plant trees that they'll never enjoy the shade, but their grandchildren will. It's investing. It's looking at, we have but one life. Are you taking that life and throwing everything you got at it? No one ever said at the end of their life, man, I wish I spent one more weekend at the office. But no one's ever looked at them and said, man, it's frustrating. I went to children's ministry and got to lead 3 kids to Christ. I would really wish I could have been playing a game. That would have been more fun. No. If it die. There's an immutable law. In Galatians chapter number 6, verse number 7, it says, be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. For if he soweth to his flesh, shall the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. There's an immutable law. It goes like this. It's called the law of sowing and reaping. How many have ever heard this before? The law of sowing and reaping goes like this. You reap what you sow. You reap more than what you sow, and you reap later than what you sow. I taught this, I believe, a year ago, Springs. That'd be 2019 spring. It's the law of sowing and reaping, and it's an immutable law. It's an unchanging law. It's a law that will always be there. And what it means is you reap what you sow. You plant apple seeds, you get oranges, right? Now just make sure everyone's still awake. I did get 2 yups, so let's try that again. If you plant apple seeds, you will get apples. Sow mercy then. If we sow mercy, you'll get mercy back. Plant for souls, you'll get souls back. Plant hope, you'll get hope back. Listen, our young people are living in a world where they're told that their greatest days of their country are behind them. They're living in a world that's told it's a post-Christian world. Kyla, I believe they need you in the back. No, they need James in the back. He, our kung fu fighting National Guard hero. By the way, James just got a big award from the National Guard, so make sure you tell him congrats. Outstanding achievement or something along those lines, if I remember correctly. We reap what we sow. If you do not sow in your life things that you want to reap, what are you doing? There's a book out, it's by Jordan Peterson. It's called 12 Rules for Life. I don't recommend everything in it, but there's a couple parts I like. One of the parts I like is, and it's a great little chapter, it's called this: don't let your children do things that annoy you. As a counselor, I highly recommend this. There's it makes no sense to me. I'll talk to people. People go, well, listen, my kid, it's just so annoying. I'm like, why would you let your kids do that then? Because guess what? They're going to keep doing it. You reap what you sow. It just keeps happening. But the problem is, most of us, we don't stop things. You reap what you sow. You reap more than what you sow. My grandmother, I love her. She's in heaven now. My grandmother looked at me one day and said, I have to live with the monsters I raised. She said, and I raised your mom, and I allowed your other 2 sisters to get away with everything. She said, and now your mom calls me every week, goes to church and loves God, and your 2 sisters are still getting away with everything. And I have to live with the monsters I raised. Be careful what monsters you raise, Joe. I sat there, and I'm sitting there thinking, I think I was 13. I was like, no, we're not doing this. I had been around my aunts. I love my aunts, but they are monsters. They are not people who I want to live with. And they said, my grandmother said, listen, you're going to have to live with them. Make your decisions now. What's funny now will be the devil later. By the way, can I tell you the great lesson I have for some of you go, oh, but we're not parents anymore. We're grandparents now. Can I tell you the lesson from that? A grandmother told a grandchild something and he listened. And to this day, it's stuck in that grandkid's head. My grandmother, who lived in Florida, who I only got to see 1 to 2 weeks a year at max, gave me so many lessons I still keep in my mind today. Because she would have time. I'm going to go take you out to Arby's. She hated Arby's, but my brother loved it, so she'd take us there. And I was just grateful to go out to lunch. I didn't matter. Give me those curly fries. You guys can keep the sandwich. My brother would trade me his curly fries for my sandwich. I'd give him it. I'd be sitting there with 2 big things of curly fries and a big thing of pop. It's no wonder I was overweight. Eating all those curly fries in the back there. Got one of those big old things of pop going, this is great. And my grandma would sit there on a park bench with us and look at us and go, let me tell you some lessons I want to teach you today. My grandpa would sit there and say, here's the things you need to know about life. There's an immutable law. You reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. You reap more than what you sow. And then you reap way later than you sow. We all want everything now. Throw it to me now. It doesn't work that way. It comes later. Because there's an inevitable harvest. There's an inevitable harvest. You will reap one day. It's going to happen. I had a person look at me once and said, Pastor, you just don't get it. You just don't get it. Everyone's mean to me. Everyone. I sat there and nodded quietly. If I get quiet when we're in a conversation, I'm either not paying attention or I'm biting my tongue. Those are the two choices. How many have been there? How many have ever walked out of a conversation and your tongue is almost bleeding because you bit yourself so many times? You're like, don't talk, don't say anything. And this person just going, I'm going, nod, don't talk, nod. Because I'm sitting there thinking, it doesn't shock me. What have you been sowing for 60 years? What are you sowing in other people's lives? You remember the story of the rich man and Lazarus. How Abraham turns to the rich man and said, you in your life have many good things, but you didn't do anything with it. So now you reap your reward. Whereas Lazarus, he sought the better part. Look at the reward he's reaped. Hey, listen, there's going to come a day where I'm going to stand before God and I'm going to have to give an account for everything I've done with my life. Let it be for the good things of God. Unfortunately, for it to be the good things of God, someone's got to die. That someone's got to be me. By the way, for God to do something good in your life, someone's got to die, and it's got to be you. The problem is that it's not a one-day death. It's an everyday dying. Any day that I let my old flesh rise up, how many have noticed that your old flesh rises up faster than the spiritual side of you? I mean, that old flesh can rise up at a heartbeat. Jeff turned to me and says, hey, is that the last cookie? Yeah, it's my cookie! And I had a good day until that old man just shot right out of there. Jeff's standing over there going, I'm sorry, I was just asking about a cookie. It's just an Oreo. Yeah, but it's my Oreo. Hey, there's inevitable harvest. What investment are you going to make today? David Brainerd lived almost 200 years ago, and yet we're still talking about a man who only lived 29 years. But those 29 years were amazing. Those 29 years were wonderful. Those 29 years were spent changing the world. Hey, we can change the world. You can change your world. There's a kid in your street who needs to hear about Jesus. There's a grandkid who needs to be told about the love of God. There's a family member who needs some. Like half of this room is going to go to family reunions for Thanksgiving. I just saw that, right? Sit down with someone, tell them about the love of God, tell them about what God's doing in your heart. Share with them the Bible. Be the crazy Bible person. Yes, be that person. See, this is the thing. We get so concerned. I don't want to be looked at as weird. Here's the thing. When their life goes completely apart and everything's falling apart, on that day, if you're the kind, crazy Bible person, not the mean, crazy Bible person, how many know the difference? They'll call you up. And they'll like, okay, so it's all falling apart. How do I get out of this? There's a love of God. There's some seeds that can be planted. It's time we take our life and we plant it so it can bring forth much fruit. Well, Kate's waving at me in the back and telling me that I'm done. So let's finish out in our service today. My little niece is in the back. She's doing a wave thing right now. But I want to challenge you tonight. Let's make certain we live our lives as God has told us to and follow the statement that's there. Because I don't know if you caught it. Did you catch it yet? I'll slide it all the way back. If. See, here's the other story. If it doesn't die, there is no tree. Do you understand, if David Brainerd doesn't give out his life, there is no revival among the Native Americans. There was no church. There was nothing. If it wasn't willing to die. So I asked you the question today. See, it's the question we have to ask every single morning. If. Am I willing to die for Christ today? Your hero is no braver than any other man. He's just braver 5 minutes longer. I ask you to be braver 5 minutes longer today. Say, it's not an if for me anymore. I choose to die daily for Christ. Let's pray. Dear Lord and Father, thanks for teaching us, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for how much you blessed us, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity, Lord, to hear your sermon preached and for your word to do such a great work in our hearts. Lord, I pray, Lord, that we will see, Lord, your goodness and grace upon each and every one of us. We're going to play the song, I Have Decided to Follow Jesus, hymn number 635. If we've decided tonight to make a decision to die daily, maybe you're already doing it, maybe you've already made the decision, you may say, Lord, help me to continue to die daily. As she plays just one verse of this song, let's pray together that God will help us to live a life that is worth the living. Well, I thank you for listening to that lesson tonight. We did a 4-week series on this. Does anyone have any questions or something that you would like to ask? I know Jeff asked a great question earlier. If you have any questions on any of the 4 weeks of lessons, this is kind of a class format, so we allow that. We'll shut the live stream off. This way it can just go to just us in the room. I won't promise I won't keep you long on this, but if someone does have a question, I would like to try to answer.